I never imagined that my own daughter's marriage would become my greatest temptation. One stormy night, a desperate son-in-law, and a confession that changed everything. You would do it better than her. What happened next is a secret we planned to take to the grave, or at least that's what we thought, until the truth came knocking in the most terrifying way. Get ready for a story of forbidden passion, betrayal, and an escape with no return that will leave you breathless. Now let's begin, and don't forget to subscribe. The rain was pounding against the windows of my living room with a violence that seemed intent on shattering the silence of my empty house. It was almost 11 at night. My daughter, Lucia, was at a conference in another city, and I was about to read a book with a glass of red wine as my only company. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't a normal ring, it was desperate, rhythmic, insistent. When I opened the door, the cold from the storm rushed into the hallway. There he was. Marco. My son-in-law. He was soaked from head to toe, his white shirt clinging to his body, revealing the structure of his shoulders and the chest rising and falling with agitation. His eyes, usually kind and distant, were bloodshot, not with anger but with a mix of frustration and something else I couldn't identify at that moment. "Elena, I can't take it anymore," he said, his voice breaking. "She's not here, but I couldn't stay in that house for one more minute. Everything reminds me that I'm not enough for her." I let him in without thinking. I handed him a dry towel and poured him a glass of the same wine I was drinking. We sat on the couch in front of the fireplace, which was just beginning to warm the room. The smell of rain mixed with wood and his cologne, a woody scent that had always seemed too masculine for the shyness he usually showed around my daughter. "Lucia is young, Marco. Sometimes she doesn't know what she has." I tried to comfort him, though deep down I knew my daughter had always been capricious and cold with him. He let out a bitter laugh and downed the wine in one gulp. Then he moved closer, closing the distance we had always kept during the 3 years of his marriage. He looked at me, and for the first time I didn't see my daughter's husband. I saw a wounded man, hungry for attention. "That's the problem, Elena. She has everything but gives nothing. She treats me like I'm just another piece of furniture." Marco set the glass down and turned toward me, his knees brushing mine. "I've watched you all these years. The way you take care of every detail, the way you speak, the way you move. Sometimes I close my eyes and wish she had a bit of your fire, your maturity." My heart skipped. The wine had begun to take effect, softening my defenses. The warmth of the fire made the steam from his damp clothes wrap around us like an intimate haze. "You shouldn't say that," I whispered, though my body didn't pull away. "Why not?" he asked, his voice dropping to almost a murmur. Tonight, while we were arguing on the phone, I realized something. She complains about everything, says I'm too much, that my intensity exhausts her. And while she was yelling, I was thinking about you. Thinking that you would understand. You would do it better than her, Elena. In every way. You'd know what to do with a man who's willing to give everything. That sentence was the trigger. You'd do it better than her. It was as if a dam broke inside me. Comparison was forbidden, dangerous, but it was the most exciting thing anyone had said to me in years. Marco reached out and brushed my cheek with the back of his fingers. His skin was cold from the rain, but his touch burned. "Marco, I'm her mother," I said, though my lips were already moving toward his unconsciously. "For me tonight, you're just the woman who's been in my dreams since the day I met you," he replied. The first kiss wasn't slow. It was an explosion of pent-up need. Tasted like wine and urgency. Marco gripped the back of my neck with a force that made me gasp, and I found myself tangling my fingers in his wet hair, forgetting the world, forgetting my daughter, forgetting the morals that had defined my whole life. Couch became too small. His hands began exploring my waist, slipping beneath my silk blouse. Every inch of my skin he touched seemed to ignite. There was no hesitation in his movements, only fierce determination. He lifted me effortlessly, and without breaking the kiss, we made our way to the stairs. Each step was a sin we chose to commit. In my bedroom, lightning flashes illuminated the space, casting shadows across the walls. He laid me gently on the bed but didn't stop. He pulled off his soaked shirt, revealing a body shaped by work and frustration, and I couldn't help but trace every line with my eyes. "Look at me, Elena," he said, breathless. "I want you to know this isn't about her. It's about you. You've always been the one who drove me crazy at family dinners, the one who made me tremble when you kissed my cheek." He came over me with a passion I had never experienced. There was no trace of the shy son-in-law, only a man claiming what he desired. His hands felt like fire against my skin, appreciating every curve with a devotion I had never known. He made me feel young, electric, needed. The sound of the rain became the perfect backdrop to our passion. The bed creaked beneath us. Every touch was a rebellion against routine and neglect. His lips traced my neck and shoulders, moving slowly, torturously, making me beg for more. "You're perfect, better than I ever imagined," he whispered against my ear. Passion reached a point of no return. We were wrapped in the sheets, our bodies creating heat in the middle of the storm. I felt like I was betraying everything I loved, yet I had never felt so alive. Just as pleasure threatened to overwhelm us, just as Marco was about to take me to a climax that promised to change everything, a flash of white lights illuminated the front of the house through the window. The sound of a car engine shutting off froze my blood. I looked at Marco, his eyes wide, still burning with desire, but he had heard it too. The front door creaked open downstairs, followed by familiar footsteps on the floor. "Mom? Marco? Strange, the living room light is on. Is anyone here?" Lucia's voice echoed from the first floor, clear and confused. "Is anyone here?" We froze in bed, our bodies still entwined, sweat cooling on our skin, hearts pounding like they were trying to escape. Marco looked at me in terror, his hands still on my chest. Lucia was coming up the stairs. Panic took hold of us like an electric shock. There was no time to think. Marco, with an agility only the fear of being discovered can grant, slipped out of bed. In absolute silence, he gathered his wet clothes from the floor. His eyes begged me for a solution. "Lucia!" I shouted, trying to keep my voice from trembling as I quickly put on my silk robe and tousled my hair to look freshly awakened. "Honey, what a surprise! I thought you were coming back tomorrow." I heard her footsteps stop just before reaching the top landing. Marco slipped onto the small balcony of my bedroom, hiding behind the heavy velvet curtains. Cold rain seeping through the balcony door must have been torture on his bare skin, but he had no other choice. "The last flight got cancelled because of the storm, Mom. I had to take a shared taxi," Lucia said, finally appearing in my doorway. "Are you okay? You're very flushed. And that perfume, it smells like Marco." My heart stopped. The woody scent of his cologne, mixed with wine and sex, filled the room unmistakably. "Well, Marco came by a while ago," I lied, feeling every word like a stab in my throat. "He was in a really bad state, Lucia. You two had a terrible fight, didn't you? He came here soaked, looking for advice. He left about 20 minutes ago. He must have left his scent on the couch and here when he came to ask me for an extra blanket." Lucia frowned. She stepped closer to the bed, looking at the messy sheets. I sat on the edge, trying to hide the dampness I still felt between my legs. 20 minutes? "That's strange, I didn't see his car outside," she murmured suspiciously. "He says he turned off his phone, that he doesn't want to hear from me. He's so immature. He left on foot in the rain, sweetheart. He was very upset. Go get some rest, we'll talk tomorrow calmly." Lucia sighed, visibly exhausted. Luckily, her own fatigue became my greatest ally. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and walked away to her old room at the end of the hallway. As soon as I heard her door click shut, I ran to the balcony. Marco was shivering, his lips blue but his gaze burning with dark adrenaline. I helped him back inside. The danger of being caught had only fueled the fire consuming us. We looked at each other in the dim light. He dressed quickly, his hands trembling. "This isn't over, Elena. he whispered, stepping closer to give me a kiss that tasted like desperation and promise. Tomorrow she has an appointment with a lawyer about some company papers. I'll be alone. I'll be waiting for you at my mountain cabin at 6. If you don't come, I'll go crazy. He left through the back door, disappearing into the stormy night. I spent the night awake, listening to my daughter's breathing in the next room and feeling the ghost of her husband's hands on my skin. I felt like a despicable woman, but I had never felt this hunger before. The next day, the wait was torture. Every time Lucia spoke about how unbearable Marco was, I remembered the way he had looked at me, the way he had said I did it better. 5:30, I made an excuse about meeting some friends and drove to the cabin. It was an isolated place, surrounded by pines where the only witness would be the wind. When I arrived, Marco was already there. There were no words. The moment I crossed the threshold, he pinned me against the wooden door. His hands went straight to my neck, pulling me into a kiss that felt more like a collision. I've spent all day imagining this moment, he growled against my skin. He led me to the main room, where a sheepskin rug in front of a roaring fireplace seemed to invite us into sin. He stripped me of my dress with animal urgency, leaving my body exposed to the firelight. He knelt in front of me, his hands beginning to explore my thighs with almost reverent devotion. I want all of you, Elena. I want to taste every part of the woman who's driven me insane, he said before burying his face between my legs. The touch of his tongue was a revelation. His technique was far more precise and intense than anything I had ever known. Marco devoted himself to a deep, rhythmic motion that made me arch my back, gripping his shoulders for support. His fingers didn't stay still either. They moved in a cadence that drove me wild, exploring me, pushing my limits. Marco, oh my God! Cried, losing all composure. He didn't stop. His hands moved lower, gripping me firmly. With an expert motion, he turned me over, leaving me on all fours on the soft rug. I felt the cool air of the cabin on my back, contrasting with the burning heat radiating from him. His lips traced my spine, leaving marks along the way, claiming my skin as his. He moved lower, exploring every forbidden inch of me with slow, deliberate intensity that made my body tremble. His fingers returned, now with a different purpose, working with a steady pressure while his other movements kept building a storm of sensation inside me. Contrast between softness and firmness made me shudder uncontrollably. Look at you, Elena, he whispered, making me glance back over my shoulder. You're mine. The more mine than she'll ever be. He prepared me, stretching my limits, bringing me closer and closer to the edge. His touch, his control, his hunger, it all pushed me beyond anything I had ever experienced. Then he positioned himself behind me. I felt him, warm and pulsing, pressing against me. But before moving further, he lowered himself again, intensifying everything until my strength gave out and I collapsed onto my elbows, completely surrendered. You're so incredible, so perfect, he murmured as every movement sent waves through my body. Climax hit me like a tidal wave. My body shook as he finally moved inside me, filling me completely. It wasn't just passion, it was possession, rebellion, something that erased everything else. We moved together, the sound of us overtaking the crackling fire. The intensity kept rising. He pulled my hair back so I could see his face, transformed by desire. Tell me you're mine, Elena. Say it, he demanded. I'm yours, Marco. Do whatever you want with me. I cried, forgetting everything, who I was, what I meant to him, what this all meant. The peak of it all, just as we were about to lose ourselves completely, Marco's phone, lying on the wooden table, began to vibrate insistently. On the screen, the name Lucia lit up like a warning in the darkness. Marco froze, still inside me. His eyes locked with mine. Sweat dripped from his forehead onto my chest. The phone kept ringing. Once, twice, and then a text message appeared on the screen, visible from where we were. Dad just told me about your cabin. I'm on my way there now with the police. I know you're not alone, Marco. The game is over for both of you. The world stopped. pleasure turned into an icy chill running down our spines. We were naked, entangled in the deepest sin, and the sound of tires crunching on the gravel outside began to echo in the distance. Fear for a second was like a slab of ice crushing us. But then Marco looked at me with a predatory smile, one I had never seen before. In his eyes there was no defeat, only a dark and thrilling resolve. "Let's go," he said hoarsely, pulling away from me. "Let's leave right now. I have money, I have contacts, and I have a car ready a kilometer from here. If we stay, we'll die inside. If we go, the world will be our bed." I didn't hesitate. I couldn't. What I felt for him wasn't familial affection or respect. It was a chemical addiction that pushed me to follow him to the ends of the earth. We dressed in seconds, jumped out the back window, and ran through the muddy forest paths as sirens began to wail in the distance, heading toward the empty cabin. 3 days later, we were in a private villa overlooking the Amalfi Coast in Italy. We had left behind our identities, our families, and any trace of morality. We were inside a bubble of luxury and sin, surrounded by the deep blue sea and the absolute silence of an isolated property. There, the darkness of our relationship became our only light. There was no tomorrow, only the endless present of our bodies. That afternoon, under a sun that burned the skin, Marco led me to the upper terrace. He made me strip completely, leaving me exposed to the salty air and his insatiable gaze. He took his time. He wanted to devour me with his eyes before doing so with his mouth. "Every side of your body," he whispered, kneeling in front of me. "I'm going to taste every corner of the woman who sacrificed everything for this man." He began with my feet, kissing each toe with a tenderness that contrasted with the strength of his hands on my ankles. He moved up my calves, pausing behind my knees, a spot that made me tremble uncontrollably. His lips felt like fire against my skin, a skin he treated like forbidden treasure. When he reached my thighs, his tongue traced slow patterns, moving closer and then pulling away from the center of my desire. I gasped, my hands buried in his hair, guiding him, begging him. "Marco, please." "I'm going to," I moaned, feeling the tension building inside me. He didn't stop. Or rather, he did hear me and chose to prolong it. He intensified his rhythm, driving me into an overwhelming climax that left me breathless, my legs giving way beneath me. And just as I tried to recover, he began again. Again and again, Marco pushed me to the edge. My experience as a mature woman allowed me to feel each wave of pleasure with a depth he seemed to crave. I lost myself over and over, our bodies moving in a rhythm that erased everything else. "Isn't it enough for you?" he asked, rising with fire in his eyes. Without waiting, he turned me around and pressed me against the marble railing. I leaned forward, my body exposed, surrendered to him completely. I felt him against me, intense and insistent. This time there was no slow build, only urgency, only need. His hands gripped my hips firmly as he moved with relentless rhythm, each motion echoing in the quiet of the afternoon. We were two addicts lost in the same craving. The danger of being discovered was gone, but the knowledge of who we were, the boundaries we had crossed, made everything feel even more forbidden, more intense, more consuming. "You're my addiction, Elena," he said, his voice breaking with intensity. "Tell me you'll never go back. Never. I only want this. Give me more, Marco," I answered, my voice trembling under the weight of everything I felt. Our encounters repeated day and night. In the kitchen, in the pool, under the shower. We became prisoners of our own desire, exploring every hidden part of ourselves without shame. He adored my maturity, the way I understood how to move, how to respond. And I adored his energy, his lack of limits. The end of our story was not regret. Months later, we were still there in our private paradise. Lucia and my ex-husband had become distant shadows of a life that no longer belonged to us. That final night, after hours of passion that left us exhausted on black silk sheets, Marco held me from behind, his hand resting possessively on my stomach. "We did it, Elena," he whispered, kissing my shoulder. "We're free." I looked out the window at the horizon, where the moon reflected over the Mediterranean. I felt full, satisfied, and above all, alive. We had traded morality for absolute pleasure, and as I felt him stir again against me, I knew that our happiness, dark and forbidden as it was the only real thing left to me. And I was willing to embrace it until my very last breath.